Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning. Uh, welcome back to Teamwork Tuesday. It is the end of February, and it's been a minute. We've had some really fascinating things happen here. If you're just joining in, if you're joining us live, or if you're listening to this recording later, we're so glad you're here. We are Whole Human Coaching, and our show, this live recorded episode, every episode, our show is called Getting to Unstuck. And so at Getting to Unstuck, we are focused on helping you understand and make sense of life, and in particular work, and how it relates, and that how you can show up as not just a great version of you, but as a whole human, because that's what life is about. So welcome, Carol and Colin. We're kind of coming in from across the country. Today we're going to be talking about respect versus trust. So is there a difference and why it matters? So a couple interesting things about this off the top. Before we get into this, respect versus trust is actually something that comes up a lot when we're coaching people as well. And speaking of coaching, do you like how I did that little segue right there?
Watch, that was beautiful.
In just 2 days, we are doing a live coaching workshop. It's called The Future is Whole Human Coaching, and it's a 90-minute live workshop. We have only a couple spots left as of right now, as I'm recording this, and we would love to have you join us, but you need to be there live because it's actually going to be in person, because that's what coaching is about. So you can find out more over at wholehumancoaching.com. So let's get down to the good stuff here. So we're looking at what we've learned this month and about the difference between respect and trust. So let's start with thinking about, well, actually, let me read you a quote that I found. It's actually, I've made it into a quote. It was just something I found in an article because I think it's such a fantastic quote. It says that trust means being uncompromised by doubt. Isn't that powerful?
It is really powerful.
Yeah.
Yes.
So good. So simple.
So simple. So simple.
Yeah.
And when I think of it, I automatically have a couple of different, I have a visual of what it could look like in a situation. I can feel it in my body about like to be uncompromised by doubt. And if someone's like, okay, well, what if you said that that's the way it is, then I trust you. Or you said you're going to do this, I trust you, right? You're not compromised by doubt. It's fascinating.
Right.
Yeah,
It
so
really
good.
is.
Perfect.
Yeah. And immediately as you said it, Crystal, I thought there's a real visual of all the different situations where trust is vital and important. And when you try that on, that's how it fits.
Yep.
Yeah.
Trust between a parent and child, trust between a leader and employees, trust between a police officer and someone who is going to go to them. Like, where we are seeing that, the opposite of it is where we have our challenges in our communities and society right now.
Yeah.
Oh boy, right? Especially on things like social media, and where doubt seems to be injected in it everywhere, right? So the doubt is injected, the fear is amplified, the division gets wider. It's such a great definition, Crystal.
Yeah, I love it. So if we were to kind of walk back through the month of February, I think we're going to actually start at the end at our most recent episode, which was also a conversation that we had. And the reason that we're walking backwards is because it's kind of like taking a thread, and we're going to be going back through things and being like, see, that thread was there all along. When we started the month of February, we knew we'd be talking about community and relationships. And we quickly realized that it comes down to this exact topic that we're talking about today that makes the difference, that makes or breaks relationships. So last Thursday, which was, in case you're wondering, actually our most popular episode this month as well, we were in conversation with Amanda Ring. And Carol, wow, that was just such a fantastic conversation we had with her.
So amazing. It could have gone on for a couple of hours. We had so many topics that we wanted to touch on. And there was one term that came out of the conversation with Amanda. And I look back at my notes from that day, and I was just scribbling pieces as she was speaking because there were so many golden
I
pieces
know.
for it.
Yeah.
But she was talking about sovereignty and
Mm.
how important sovereignty is to us as human beings. And the
Mhm.
word itself has so many, again, implications when you look at
Yeah,
where
sure.
the derivative of it and where it came from. And it is considered to be a normative state for human beings, that we are sovereign in our being
Wow.
and that we have the right to be making choices about where we live, who we live with, who we love, where we are educated, so many aspects of it. There is kind of an assumption that we could hold ourselves as sovereign human beings. And yet, so much of our lives feels compromised
Mhm.
by who we have to be and where we have to be that.
Mm.
And a lot of what Amanda suggested to us is how important it is to interrupt the patterns
Mhm.
and to be able to look at things from a different perspective.
Yeah.
And she used the term from an eagle's perch. And I
Oh.
found myself repeating that a couple of times in my
Mhm.
coaching conversations afterwards, because it's such a lovely way for us to consider how else we could be looking at the world. So if we were sitting on an eagle's perch and looking, what would we see?
Mhm.
And how would it be different? And how could we as human beings be returning to our authentic truths? And what would that mean in community and relationships if we
Yeah.
were operating that way? It was such a provocative conversation with
Yeah.
Amanda, and if you haven't seen it, I invite you to go back and review
Yeah.
it because she really brought a lovely energy to this whole idea of matriarchal versus patriarchal and where we can
Mhm.
stand in harmony.
Yeah.
That was the other
Mhm.
terminology that was
Yeah.
so wonderful. And it was a beautiful kind of compilation or compilation of all the other conversations that we'd been having in the
Mhm.
month.
Yeah.
Thank you to Amanda Ring for bringing a lot
Mhm.
of the threads
Yeah. So
together
good.
for us.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Yeah. What about you, Colin? What are your thoughts on
Well,
what Amanda
I
brought?
mean, I thought that I think the concept of sovereignty, as you described it, Carol, not in a sort of monarchy style, but in the way that it was intended and described, in this idea of an eagle's perch, I think it feels as though it's almost mission critical these days.
Mhm.
Mhm.
Because and I say a lot in my work when I'm talking to somebody, I'm like, look up, don't look down, right?
Mhm.
Because we are so engaged in our phones and our tablets and our well, really that's it, and all the detrimental effects of social media, and looking down and being sort of absorbed in your own little world and your own little ecosystem
Mm.
that is feels so unhealthy for you. So I love this idea of sovereignty and that eagle's nest. I think um but that requires courage too,
Oh,
right?
yes.
To
Yeah.
go up into the trees and to look afar, and maybe even have some of your ideas and your convictions and your beliefs and your patterns um
Mm.
questioned, right?
Yes.
um
Mhm.
and it also, I think it requires courage, but also like, it's a battle these days to
Mm.
get to that place of that perch, I think.
Yes.
Because we're so bombarded from every
Oh,
angle,
yes.
energetically and
I've
and
been
everything. So
traveling this week, and one of the things I noticed in a waiting room for the BC ferries was probably 95% of people were doing this. They were
Yeah.
mm,
head down, they were on their phones, there was
yeah,
no conversations happening, there was nobody looking at the amazing view out the window. We were all down here, and look up, Colin, that's such a
yeah,
beautiful way of in so
yeah.
many ways of what we can how we can shift our perspective
Yeah.
immediately.
Yeah.
Mm.
You know,
Yeah.
it reminded me too of those conversations that we've had around Martha Beck's book, The Way of Integrity,
Mm.
right? Because um, kind of reclaiming your sovereignty also means you need to dive into who you really are, right?
Mm.
And who you really are, I think, again, in our culture today, like you mentioned, is really hard to express when you have expectations that might be in a partnership, in a relationship, in the office, within your team. So authenticity, integrity, and sovereignty. Maybe next month we dive into those subjects more, because it feels as though so much of what we've talked about even in the last few months is this disconnection from that sovereignty. I don't know what you think, Carol or Crystal, about that disconnection.
Finding our way back to feeling like you have agency in your life, and that you are making choices that are choices that you can live with, not just live with, but that you're proud of, that you're connected to, that your relationships, there's connection there. I think that the whole idea of sovereignty is something that it's kind of been pushed to the back burner, like what you said, Colin, because we are everything is so urgent, and what a timely thing to think about sovereignty when we think about things that are going all over the world, and how people's their own rights and sovereignty is being taken from them in many, many ways, and how important it is for us to be clear first on who we are, so that we can become instruments of so we can be in solidarity with other people too, right? Like solidarity isn't about something outside of us. It's about inside. And I think that's what I took from Amanda's conversation as well, was about the importance to make sure that, because we called her into the conversation based on the fact that how do you heal from trust when trust is broken? And these are all elements of how we heal. And the reality is no one is going to save us. We save ourselves.
Right.
And that's what sovereignty is, right? Sovereignty is I get to save myself. Right. So we also talked about one of our topics was about, we called it trusted teams always do this. And I again wrote down another note here about, in relation to when we talked about that trust equals to be uncompromised by doubt. In the concept of a team and of showing up for in the team, either like as a leader within, or you are the leader, whatever that looks like. People can't do their best work if they doubt other people's intentions. They just can't. It's just not possible. It's not possible. And if they doubt their intentions or their capabilities, and I think back, and we use this all the time, and I give credit to one of our clients who said this at one of our retreats that we were leading. Clear is kind, and clear is kind. And I think that trusted teams are clear on where they are, where they're going, what's important, and they're clear on giving feedback. They're clear on showing up and on taking responsibility. And that has been something that we're seeing over and over again. And I think that's just such a valuable thing, because we are immersed in a world that's so easy for us to find fault with someone else and to pass the buck over and over. That's just a common narrative, and every level of our society, that's just the common default. And so to interrupt, again, like what Amanda said, to interrupt those patterns is how we build trust, because people have to respect our position, but that doesn't mean that they have to trust us. That's on us to earn that trust.
It is. And I think as we look at it in the workplace, there is this element of being vulnerable in the workplace, either as a leader or as a team member, so that you are willing to share some of who you really are in that space. Because that authenticity, if we really don't know each other, we don't know how to trust each other.
Yeah.
So there's some really practical abilities and skills there that we were talking about in terms of how to build community, because in community we can feel safe and be who we are.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I remembered from that episode was the concept of the concept of small t trauma and addressing it. Remember, because if we as individuals don't know who we are, right? Because we haven't addressed certain things from our past,
Yeah.
then what are we doing? We are bringing to that conversation a mask or a walled version of us, right?
Yeah.
So it's interesting that, the topic of trust, is so deep. But if you don't go and do that work of really understanding who you are and where your thought process and your patterns, right? Like Amanda was saying,
Yeah.
dissect it all, just go have fun and dissect it all and find out, what stories are still serving you today,
Yeah.
right?
Mhm.
That
Yeah,
that
that's a
might
great
have been on
point.
repeat for 20, 30 years, 40 years, who knows?
Yeah. Yeah.
And see if they're serving you. So that, I thought that was
Yeah.
powerful from that conversation as well.
Mhm.
Well, it's interesting
Address.
that we began this month talking about community and relationships. That was the theme from our Wheel of Life. And I think we very quickly got to that foundational piece, which is
Mhm.
about trust. And so every aspect of our conversations this month it's been mirrored back to that.
Yeah.
Respect versus trust. What is, there is a difference. How do we earn both? Because we also want to be respected in the
Sure.
world,
Mhm.
but will we ever be respected if we're not trusted?
Probably not. At
Not
least
really, right?
I don't.
Yeah.
I don't
There's
think so.
the artificial respect that we say we
Mhm.
should have for our leaders, for our political leaders, for
Yeah.
teachers. I mean, it's all spoken to us that we should respect our elders. How
Yeah.
many times have
Almost
we
like
heard that when we were growing up, right?
Oh, yeah.
it,
Yeah.
but it's almost like obedience, right? Because if there isn't
Exactly.
trust, then it's something else. It's not
It
trust.
is.
It's obedience or
Yeah.
something similar. I'm probably,
Yeah.
Yeah.
because it's almost like trust and um, trust and respect need to go hand in hand.
They
I
do.
think,
Yeah.
you know.
And isn't it interesting that there's
So
a when people try to flip the script on us, if we don't trust them, it's somehow a lack of moral clarity on our part for not
Yes.
trusting them.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And like to try to there's that element of like me trusting you. And again, it's like if I'm uncompromised by doubt about how I feel like about you, that's not a reflection of anything moral. That is a reflection of whether you've given me sufficient evidence and reason to actually trust and respect you.
Mhm. Yes, it really is.
Mhm.
And that evidence is going to have to be repeated over and over again in order for people to continue to have it.
Mhm.
And that's the work that I think we are working on with some of the leaders that we do our coaching and training with,
Mhm.
is that this isn't a one-off and done. Just
Yeah.
because someone has expressed that they have respect or trust for you, that has to continue to be nurtured and grown.
Mhm.
Otherwise, it wobbles. We know this. We know this in long-term relationships.
Yeah.
We know this in long-term work environments. What we thought we could trust sometimes gets questioned. And that's the healthy part, is
Yep.
that we can ask the questions, that we can be provocative and, but wait a minute, that doesn't make sense to me anymore. And that's where we're going to open up into something different.
Mhm.
Is if we each have a willingness to be questioning what we thought we should just respect.
Yeah.
And ask why.
Yeah.
Well, that has to do with, I think in one of the last episodes, you mentioned the concept of engaging in a different way of being, right? Engaging in a new way of being. And that's what we're all about. I think here at Whole Human is
Mhm.
rethinking all of these patterns. And
Yes.
Mhm.
so
It's an
yeah.
exciting prospect to take a look
Yeah.
at what this is, how it's always been. How can we have it be different?
Yeah.
That's
Exactly.
the part I love about our conversations, is
Yeah.
that we
Yeah.
really want to challenge the status quo.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah,
Yeah.
100%.
Yeah. And that it's okay to change your mind too, right? It's
Mm.
okay. In fact, I think it's a sign of it's a sign, it's a good sign if you're like, I used to be stuck in believing this. This was something I believed. But
Yeah.
I now have changed my experience has led me to change, or however that we come to that
And if you
that
go up into that eagle's perch, like if you go to that eagle's perch,
Mhm.
you're bound to change your way of
Exactly.
thinking and
Yes.
being. And it's like, oh,
Mhm.
there's a much wider angle lens on everything that I'm looking at in the
Oh,
world.
Yeah.
So,
Yeah.
um,
Yeah.
yes.
I would argue that it is essential almost
Yeah.
to change. Otherwise,
Yeah.
what's that word when you don't grow, when you're just stay you
Stagnant.
stagnate, right?
Stagnant.
Mhm.
Yeah. Yeah.
And
It's
you're,
true, right?
you know,
In
echo chamber.
in
Boom.
Yeah, well, in Saskatchewan, where I grew up, is we have something called sloughs, because Saskatchewan has tons of lakes and sloughs. And a
Mhm.
slough is literally, almost everybody would have some on their farm property somewhere. A slough is a body of water that doesn't have, it either doesn't have, maybe has fresh water coming in somewhere, but the fresh water's got nowhere to go. So it
Oh,
stagnates.
yes.
And that's where
Mhm.
everything, it's just gross. It's not, and always when I
Oh,
think of the word stagnant, I think of that. Um,
oh, right.
I think of that it has nowhere to flow. So when
Yes.
when we get
Ooh.
that eagle's perch and we realize things, new
Mhm.
information has come in, and now for it to stay fresh, there needs to be a way for it to flow through.
Okay, so here's
Well,
the question to leave this with.
Okay.
Is your workplace a
Mm.
river or is it a slough?
Ooh, yikes. Yeah.
oh
Mm.
boy, hi next month's topics. It reminds me of that. Remember Lynn Twist's book on the soul of money too? That was
Mhm.
Yes.
all about a
Keep the
river
flow.
that has to flow. That has to
Yeah.
Mhm.
It
flow.
has to flow. Yeah.
But thanks, Carol, for next month's
Mhm.
topic.
Mm.
I
Yeah.
think we may
Yeah.
have to.
Working on flow.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Working on
yeah.
flow. Okay, well, as usual, the conversation never goes as how I was like behind the scenes. I'm always like, here's how we're going to talk about it. And then we always get off on a much better tangent than I could have dreamt
Yeah.
up. So thank you for that. And for you, our listener, we first of all want to say that we believe in you and you matter. Your choices matter, who you are matters, and your leadership matters wherever you are. Leading from where you are is what's going to make the difference. And so thanks for staying with us through this conversation. Don't forget to check out our free workshop coming up in a couple days if you're listening to it then. And after that, you'll be able to find the replay in certain capacities on our site. We'll be letting you know about that. And if you are interested, you've been hearing us talk about the Wheel of Life. You can also find the Wheel of Life over at wholehumancoaching.com. And it's really just a great way to get an eagle's perch perspective on
Mhm.
There
your
you
life
go.
and get some focus for the year ahead. You can also find out more about us and the people that we work with over there. And until next time, if you've also liked this show, feel free to subscribe and to share it with other people, because anything good worth listening to is worth being shared.
Mhm.
Until next time, thanks for joining us.
Thanks, Crystal. Bye-bye, everybody.
Bye.
Bye.